right? So there are these colleges, students are made to sit in a classroom for the entire day. They're given some books. They're supposed to basically cram up those books. They have an exam at the end of the term. One day before the exam, people will study. One day after the exam, people will forget. The front benchers will respond. The back benchers will never know what happened, right? And I think this kind of an education system, it graduates people, but I don't think it graduates, educated people, right?
Hi, Pratham. It's absolutely a pleasure to be with you today. I'm going to be your host, Vandana Mahajan. Happy to meet the revolutionary founder of Teter Business School. So I'm delighted to be hosting you today because I've been in the education sector for over 20 years, and people talk about bringing a revolution, and you are making that change. So today in our interview, we're going to be talking about your vision, your passion, your journey, and this change that we are bringing, which is a much needed change. So Pratham, please share with me your vision for the future of education.
Over the last couple of hundred of years, education has become very mundane, right? So there are these colleges, students are made to sit in a classroom for the entire day. They're given some books. They're supposed to basically cram up those books. They have an exam at the end of the term. One day before the exam, people will study. One day after the exam, people will forget. The front benchers will respond. The back benchers will never know what happened, right? And I think this kind of an education system, it graduates people, but I don't think it graduates, educated people, right? So I really feel that the future of education would be a lot more experiential, would be a lot more hands-on, would be a lot more um, engaging than the way it exists today, right? So the way I see it is that rather than using books and exams and lectures and slides and grades and attendance as pedagogical methods and techniques, in the future we'll probably be using a lot more of experiential language uh, to teach students, right? And we can get into details of what that might look like. But essentially, what I would say is that at the end of the day, you can't learn swimming by reading a book. You have to jump into the water and learn your way through it. And I think whether it's an MBA or an undergrad or a bachelor's or a any kind of a program would eventually have to become fully experiential. And I'm looking forward to discussing more in detail. There's another one thing which I think is incredibly important, right? Back in the day, um, when there were no colleges, in the 1600s and the 1700s during Renaissance, uh, rich people across the world, whether it was the Maharaja's kids in India or the Tsar's kids in Russia, the way they would get educated is that they would go on a 4-year grand tour of Europe, where they will go from country to country, city to city, learning from the experts, right? So they would go to Rome and they would meet Michelangelo and they would learn art and architecture from him. From there, they'll go to Naples, and then there they go to Sevilla, and then from there to Milan, and then Paris, and then London, right? And that was education, right? Education was going to these unknown lands and learning whatever you could learn from the people there. And I feel that we need to bring that back. And, in fact, if you were to ask people on the street who've gone to colleges, let's say in the US or UK, what was the best part of your education experience? A lot of them would say that in the summer I traveled abroad. I studied abroad in this one semester, and that is what has really stayed with me. And I think the future of education would be, number one, as I mentioned, experiential, but also would involve, putting yourself out of your comfort zone and traveling to all of these locations.
You studied in the US, you studied at one of the prestigious UPenn universities, right? And you've seen probably this change coming in. I think COVID changed the need a student needs to skill. So what was your inspiration behind the idea of Teter? I understand that, yes, we need to learn differently. What was your inspiration behind this idea?
I think both of these things, right? So when I was in college in the US, uh, I took 40 courses in total, right, as part of the undergrad program. And out of those 40 courses, 39 courses, I probably did not learn a lot, right? I probably, of course, passed an exam, showed up for class, but I don't think I learned anything that really helped me in life later on. But there was this one course where my faculty, the way they taught was incredibly experiential. This is Adam Grant that I'm speaking about, right? The way he used to teach was, again, as I said, no exams, no lectures, no slides, no grades, no attendance. The way he would teach was that he would bring in a local entrepreneur to class every week, and the local entrepreneur would give us a problem statement, and we would have to solve for that problem statement, right? That was essentially the curriculum. And I realized that, by working on these problem statements in the real world, I learned a lot more. And, those lessons have always stayed with me, things that I actually did with my hands, things that I actually experienced. And so, for me, that was really the motivation to start a school or start a college where learning happens by doing rather than by reading a book or listening to a lecture, right? The travel component, I think we added to the Teter program because of two reasons. One is that I think there are some incredible universities that are doing a great job. And so we wanted our students to have that exposure as well, right? So to an NUS in Singapore, or to an IIT in India, or to, universities, Ivy League institutions in the US. And so travel, first of all, allows for that, number one. And number two, I think when you travel to faraway lands, when you travel to different countries, you're put out of your comfort zone. I was when I went abroad. And I feel that, if we make people travel through these countries, put them out of their comfort zones, make them interact with people they otherwise would not get to interact with, I think the kind of learning that you can have is unparalleled, right? And that's what we want to unlock for our students. So I think the second motivation came from my own experience of having studied abroad. When I was in college, even though I was studying in the US, over the summer, my first summer I went to Ghana, my second summer I went to China, my third summer I went to London, right? And I was incredibly lucky to get these, to get this privilege. But honestly, I think that those learnings have really stayed with me.
That's amazing. And the Tetr program claims to be taking students across the globe. Can you talk a little bit about the campus immersions that are a part of your program?
So as I mentioned, that we really wanted to work with these top universities and expose their best courses to our students, right? Like NUS is great when it comes to international relations. IIT is great when it comes to data science. And we thought that, while we're in that country, we might as well give our students that exposure of these top universities, which are otherwise incredibly hard to get into, right? So some of our students would also be going in their final year, in the fourth year, to SDA Bocconi, which is a top school when it comes to luxury management, right? And Veblen goods. So we wanted our students to get an exposure to that. We also wanted to send our students to some of the Ivy League institutions because the kind of liberal arts education they provide is, again, unparalleled, right? So we've partnered up with these 4 or 5 institutions where our students will go and spend maybe a couple of weeks, maybe 4 weeks during a term, and get exposure to these best universities. We feel that brings the best of both worlds, the best of the academic world and best of the experiential world together.
Well, it indeed does. And I think it's a beautiful model where you experience a new location, a country, the way they do business, and the experience they get in.
Right.
These students are budding entrepreneurs, right? They're all thinking of starting a business of their own. What are some of the business immersion experiences you intend bringing into your program for these young minds?
So what we have tried to do, the curriculum is built around students starting small businesses in each term, right? So in term 1, all students in groups will build a drop shipping e-commerce business. So they'll actually be selling products online, right? So they'll procure products from a vendor and then sell them online by doing some organic and inorganic advertising. In term 2, they have to build an FMCG brand, a consumer brand in India, targeting tier 2 and tier 3 cities of India. I think that will give them incredible exposure to the reality of the Indian suburban areas, right? So on and so forth. Every term they're building these businesses. The other businesses include them building an NGO in Ghana, right? Students also should have that exposure to building not-for-profit ventures. In Brazil, they'll actually be building a sustainability venture, right, which will, tackle climate change, right? So they have to figure out how they can, trade carbon credits, how they can create an agency that perhaps helps with impact assessments. They have to figure out a sustainability venture and work on that. When they're in the US, they'll actually have to build a blockchain or an AI company, right? Again, we don't expect them to create end-to-end full products, but we expect them to create minimum viable products, small prototypes that at least lets them get into the market and get some feedback. When they're in Milan, when they're in Europe, they'll actually be building a YouTube channel and monetizing that, right? So these are some of the experiences that they'll be having as they travel the world. The idea is, again, not to build each of these businesses into a successful business, but the idea is to learn to apply whatever you learn in class in real life, right? And building your own business and going through that struggle would give you that good reality check, which is so often missing from the colleges that you and I go to.
No, absolutely. And I used to work in one of the leading universities, University of Toronto, for several years. And I saw it's the
Right,
most
okay.
rigorous university. It does offer some internship and experience, but not to the extent you're planning to give the students, because it is the need of the hour. Now we know we have Teter Business School, no classroom, no books, no exams. What is the assessment criteria going to be for the students year after year?
Yeah, so we've tried to make the assessment also real life, right? So students will actually get their grades from the revenue that they make, from the profit that they generate, from the return on ad spend in case they're running ads, from NPS, Net Promoter Score. So we'll actually try to collect real world metrics of the businesses that they're building and use that as the assessment criteria, right? So when you go in real life, when you build a company, when you run a company, your performance of the company is essentially the grade, right? It's essentially the measure of your success. And we think that same thing should apply to education as well when you're going to college.
No, absolutely. And that is the best benchmark of a successful entrepreneur or a successful businessman. Now, talking about your faculty, right? So, what kind of faculty members are going to be engaged in defining your curriculum and the program throughout these years?
We have three kinds of faculty, right? Either we have practitioner faculty, these are CEOs, MDs, chief marketing officers, chief finance officers, CXOs in various companies who come in and teach. So 30% of all of our courses are taught by these practicing faculty. The second kind of faculty is the visiting faculty that's visiting to us from other countries, right, or other universities, like a Harvard or a Wharton or a Stanford. So every term we have a couple of these faculties coming down as visiting faculty and teaching our students. And the rest are going to be faculty that's full-time faculty at Teter, right? So these are our resident faculty who will be teaching. So it's 30% visiting faculty, 30% practicing faculty, and 30% resident faculty. That's how we think about our faculty makeup.
Amazing. That's great. And the visiting faculty are going to be from all these top universities across the globe and successful entrepreneurs, I'm assuming.
Exactly. Yeah. So the first 30%, the practicing faculty, are all of these professionals, entrepreneurs or CEOs and CXOs.
Amazing. Can you share a little bit about the success stories of the Masters Union students? Because that has also been a flagship that was,
Yeah.
a lot of students came out of it. Can you just share some of the success stories we can talk about today?
I think you have to speak about your alumni and what they're up to. I think that's the best way to talk about student success. And I think we measure alumni outcomes in two ways. One is what is the average salary that our students are getting after they graduate? How much are they being valued by the industry? And the second is, if they're choosing entrepreneurship, how successful are they in starting their own companies and getting them funded? So I think one thing that we're very proud of when it comes to placements is that we've probably had the best placements record anywhere in the country in India, right? We've beaten established institutions that have existed for tens of years. The average salaries that our students are getting has been around 34 lakhs as compared to the best institutions, 32, 33 lakhs, right? And that just shows that the training and the quality of the student is just incredible. Now, when it comes to entrepreneurship, I think that is something that I'm even more proud of, because every year, approximately 10 to 15% of our students choose to become entrepreneurs, right? They choose to delay their placements and work on their startups full time, right? And every year, that number is increasing. This year, that number is approximately 15%. Hopefully, next year we can make it 20%. Thereafter, 25%. And if we can become a school for entrepreneurs, I think that would be an incredible victory.
That's fantastic. And that's such an amazing growing number that you're sharing with us. So,
Yeah.
Pratham, your journey has from Jalandhar to US. You've seen the gaps, right? And the gap has been skilling and getting experience. How are you seeing this coming as, how forthcoming are students and parents to this this unique concept?
Yeah.
Because I know this is the future, but How forthcoming are the students? What is your experience?
Teter is not for everybody. It's a very unique program. It's a very demanding program, right? So I think right off the bat, it's not even relevant to 90% of the audiences because it's too tough, it's too demanding, it's too ambitious, right? So I think our audience basically becomes 1/10 of those early adopter kind of DNA mindset folks, right? These are the folks who, probably bought the iPhone first, right? These are the folks who probably started using ChatGPT before everybody else did. So, we're really looking for that early adopter audience, students and parents who are adventurous and who are ready to take risks. Because this is a risk, this is a new program. While you and I agree that this is the future, but currently, parents are very, very risk averse, right? They are not going to take risks with their kids' lives. And I understand that that automatically, alienates 90% of the parents, right? Maybe 95% of the parents. But interestingly, the program is also disruptive enough that the people for who it is the right fit, they have found out about it, right? Because of YouTube and Instagram and social media. I think there are these specific, 5-10% people across the world who have found out about Tetr. And now they're applying in troves, right? The market is so huge, and we are just starting with 60 students. So we know that we'll get to our 60 students. It's not the hardest thing. But I fully agree with you that the risk averse, the conservative parent would not send their child yet to Tetr. However, there is a huge audience of the early adopter mindset that is very much open to trying it out.
No, that's awesome. And that's actually, as a parent, it is the future. Now, you said a very interesting thing. It is not for everybody. It is a challenging program, and it is for those who have the fire in them. So the challenging part, how is Teter programmed to take care of students' mental well-being and giving them that balance, a work-life balance, I would say, as a young student?
I think Teter is going to be a demanding program. But the thing is that we are not trying to make our students stressed, right? So even though it's a demanding program, it's not a stressful program, right? Because they don't have to like cram anything. They don't have exams, that would give them anxiety. So I want students to be engaged. I want students to be, incredibly passionate about what they're working on. And we'll give them that freedom and flexibility so that they can develop on those passions. But we do not intend to make this program stressful or anxiety driving, right? And in fact, a big chunk of the program is actually around personal wellness. Journaling and reflective meditation is part of the curriculum, right? Today, I don't know if you'd agree with me, but the number of ADHD cases that we're seeing in students, right? The number of mental health issues we are seeing among students, right? It's very, very important to have personal wellness as a central tenet of the course, right? So first of all, of course, the curriculum makes it more engaging and less stressing, but at the same time, whatever little stress may come into their lives, it has to be offset through journaling, reflective meditation, and sports, right? They need to get out a lot more. So we have tried to build that into the program, much like IB has CAS. I think we have tried to do something similar with the college program as well.
Well, absolutely. Learning by doing. I think you're very rightly said. Stress comes from exams, the pressure, the anxiety issues. And this is for someone who wants to learn by doing and who is a budding entrepreneur. So it's amazing. Well, thank you so much, Pratham, for being here today. It is the future of tomorrow. So to all our budding entrepreneurs, if you haven't already explored Teter, this is your chance. So Teter Business School is for students who are doers in the game. Thank you very much. It was indeed a pleasure, and wishing you all the best.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me.